Gonna continue with what I was talking about in the last video just a couple days ago, but I'm still feeling it. Still feeling it. It's a good thing. It's a good place that I'm at because it's the ennui, or I think that's the word, that this this kind of existential angst. It happens to me when I'm in this very, I'll just call it a spiritually aligned place. It's an energetic place where internally it feels like things are open. The chakras are open, the circuits are open, and there's this flow. And it's not perfect, but the past the past 5 years, I had this fall from grace. I had this experience that lasted for a long time. Right at the end of 2020, I had been doing very intense practice with qigong, with meditation, with astral projection. Um, and then something happened. It was right around the end of November in 2020, and there was this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And I had just finished a second back-to-back intensive of remote viewing, Monroe Gateway technique, very intensive, like hours every day in trance, in altered states of consciousness, doing very intense stuff. And I had built up to that because I had been doing meditation and qigong and other practices for a while. So actually, I was in self hypnosis. So I was actually very proficient at it, in being able to get into this very deep, profound state. And at the end of that second training, they were 5 days long each, Monday to Friday. I had this crazy vision, projection, going into the earth and meeting this dragon. And this dragon giving me this crazy download, like literally playing a movie in my head, fast forward for like a long time. Like it was a massive, like a bombardment almost into my psyche. I remember like being transfixed by this dragon's eye, and and then seeing in my mind's eye, even though the whole thing was in my mind's eye, this this kind of horrific story of the earth. And I mean, it's interesting because at the time I didn't feel this horror about it. I felt some feelings that I can't even explain now because it's hard. It's very difficult to explain. Even at the time, it was very difficult to comprehend and explain. Um, Afterwards, I was in a very profoundly altered state for 2 weeks, where I believe that I was experiencing cities, these kind of extrasensory powers. I was in this like blissed out state. I felt like I was 9 feet tall. I I believed I could hear and see other people's thoughts, emanations. Being in public spaces was a very strange. I mean, the whole thing was strange. I remember thinking at the time that I could cause different, just specific parts of my body to meditate, which doesn't make sense. It's the sensation that I experience in deep meditation of this heaviness. It's really like a chi sensation. Uh, Qigong teacher would probably say that is a chi sensation where it's like it has this tremendous gravity, like there's a black hole in your hand or arm, or there's this weight and relaxation and spaciousness, and everything feels very, very, again, there's no words for it, very kind of surreal, very dreamlike, and very floaty. And yet, you know, watching something like The Matrix, that's what it feels like. Like you feel like you're um, got superpowers. But also something that goes along with that is this kind of desirelessness, this just pure being and a quietness of mind, like no thoughts, just pure being. And like you can feel everything. You can feel everything. You can feel, you're not just feeling your own body, you're feeling everything. But to explain, you feel the spaciousness, you feel the space, the, the I don't know what you're feeling, but there's a feeling. Anyways, after about 2 weeks, I had some very painful episode that happened, and I'm not sure if it was like a physical stroke, like an aneurysm or embolism or whatever in my head. Something happened in my head that was bad. I believe some kind of head injury, some kind of physical thing, because it's taken me literally like 6 years to get over. And in that time, I went from being very, very vital and healthy and positive. Like I was doing, I was doing well at that point. Like I was feeling very positive about life, to then like falling into the pits of hell. Like that's what it felt like. And it's been like this very slow, like I couldn't even meditate afterwards. Like just everything was painful. And I was thrown from this very exalted kind of euphoric spiritual state into this very mundane state. And so I guess it's I guess it's been 5 years, just over 5 years now. And it it's been a dark night of the soul. It's been like this very heavy, difficult experience where several times I thought I was going to die, or I wanted to, or I mean, there was a couple times when I just was so low that I thought if I don't mentally decide to live, then I will die. Like there was a departure happening. And it was like, I think what one of the things that pulled me out of it was just the idea of dying and nobody finding me for like a month, right? Until my landlord was like, well, why isn't the rent being paid? Because I was, I've been so isolated. I've isolated myself, but also I already was I was already quite isolated. But over that time, I became even more isolated. And so if I died, nobody would actually know for a while. And the idea of that, of like somebody finally breaking my door down and then finding like my rotting body, just, I didn't like that idea. I thought, hey, I gotta get my shit together so I can just like die in the forest somewhere, somewhere where I can just like return to the earth before somebody finds me, which is probably not very likely, or I don't know. Anyways, you're not in your right headspace when you're in that state. Anyways, I I mean there was a bunch of things happen. There was like I tried to go to the doctor and they just wanted to give me um, antidepressants, which I actually did take for a little bit. And then I was reminded of like how shitty they are. Like obviously they're only going to make things worse. In my opinion, they only make things worse. That is not a solution. It's not even a band-aid. Is that they they will actually make things worse. And then there's been a bunch of things. There's been a bunch of things that have just like, I got fired from a job for no reason, because the boss was a total see you next Tuesday. I was doing a very, very good job. And then she came in, was new, and then she just she's just a piece of work. And I challenged her, I questioned her, and she didn't like that. Anyways, there's there's been a lot of things. I didn't actually even mean to talk about all this, but what I where I'm at now is kind of coming full circle thank God. I'm back to this place after really working on it and making choices, um, such as, for example, it, it seems kind of small, but it's actually huge for me because it's been my go-to when I've been feeling bad about life. I often, or I not often, but the kind of low point, I smoke cigarettes. I don't really. That's kind of the worst of it. I don't drink alcohol. I don't. I mean, occasionally I smoke marijuana. Very very occasionally. Um, Actually, sometimes to sleep I use this like THC CBD oil, which is great stuff. It's like 50-50 CBD THC, and it's like it doesn't even. You take like a microdose practically, and it just helps you chill out. Great for somebody like me with a high strong nervous system that sometimes has a hard time shutting off the brain. But now I'm able to do it because like my practice has got to the place where now I actually am in back to this place. I've climbed up the hill incrementally back to this place where I can sit and I don't even need to sit. I can go for a walk and clear my mind, literally have no thoughts for periods of time while I'm walking. And it's a blissful thing. It's a wonderful thing. I have this, I have this kind of um, euphoric sensation. Euphoric isn't even the best word because that sounds kind of like manic. It's very pleasurable, very peaceful, very blissful. Um, there's this, there's an interesting thing. So I'm feeling this microcosmic orbit. This, that's this term for this energy pathway in Qigong that you're activating um, through Qigong practice and meditation. So it's like this orbit up the back to the head and then down the front. It makes this loop. It goes through the three major energy centers, dantians in the body. So they're kind of like the Chinese version of chakras. But um, so I'm aware of this energy circuit and also the chakras and the dantians. So in my mind's eye, it's like these, and I'm feeling them too. Like these are lit up. I'm feeling them. I feel this like expansive energy. I'm feeling my aura kind of get charged up and full and expansive. I feel my heart opening. I feel the brow chakra. That's actually often where it starts for me. I think because of the meditation practice, this is often where it starts. So like that's where I kind of go to turn it on. When I sit to meditate, that's where I begin. And it happens very quickly. Like I just close my eyes. I don't even need to close my eyes. And this is the thing I'm trying to get to. It's like when I'm walking and I'm out and about, I do this thing with my eyes where I think it's kind of a hypnotic technique. Well, it's almost the opposite of eye fixation, which is a technique for hypnosis. So like candle gazing. If you put your gaze on a single point, you find at first your eyes want to jump around. That's reflecting the way your mind is working. If jumping around, and if you glue your eyes to a spot and keep them there and bring them back and bring them back and bring them back, which is exactly what meditative practice is, you'll find after a while they will stay fixed at that spot. It's almost like laser beams. There's some connection. There's something that happens. Your brain starts to produce different brain waves. So this is a way of getting into this alpha, theta state. Our regular waking consciousness, our brain is producing beta frequency predominantly because the brain, different areas in the brain will produce different frequencies. Meditation increases the coherence so that the brain is producing, um, is working together, left and right, front to back. It's working in a more coherent way. It's actually in meditation, they've seen that neurons will fire in a way around the brain that is quite different than normally. In regular waking beta state, the, the the neurons are firing kind of in a pathway, whereas in altered states of consciousness, deeper states of consciousness, they will fire across the brain. The brain is kind of working not so locally, but in a more holistic way, which is good. Um, so this eye fixation is one way of getting into the altered state. But when you're out in the world, that's like it's easy to do when you're at home and you just got something and you're just sitting. And it's almost what happens, you feel this kind of disassociation with the body, this slight disassociation with the body. But if you're out and about and you're walking, I mean, that a disassociation can happen, but just the act of walking is going to keep you a little more focused in your body. But if you instead use a kind of peripheral awareness, right, where you're you're how do you even describe this? I think most people know what I'm talking about, where you're just noticing the entire field of view. You may be like like what I'm doing right now. My eyes are staying kind of fixed in place. Um, you don't have to though, but it's kind of a unfocused gaze and uh, uh, looking, noticing, expanding that periphery instead of being focused in this that narrow place, looking forward, looking like with this kind of harder gaze. It's a more softer gaze and to the periphery. And in addition to that, feeling your eyes and specifically your pupils. So just being aware, the sensation of seeing, which is different than seeing. Almost like you're feeling the light coming in the pupils. And I've noticed that doing this has a similar um, effect in creating kind of trance state, relaxing the body and having this yeah this spaciousness. Something that's I have been interested in for a while is being able to access altered states of consciousness while being alert and engaged in the world. Because in my years of reading about channeling, trance channeling, conscious channeling, that's the ideal, in my opinion. In my opinion. So we got people like Edgar Casey and Jane Roberts, and who would go into a trance. They'd like go to sleep. Well, Edgar Casey would lie down and pretty much like go to sleep, whereas Jane Roberts would kind of close her eyes. This is like more similar to um, Esther Hicks, kind of close their eyes, go into a trance, and then open their eyes, and then there's this other persona, there's this other being supposedly. But my take on all of that, and I've read lots of, and I've watched lots of Asterix and read all of the um, Jane Roberts books, and there's a lot of them. And I don't think I've read all the books about Edgar Casey, but I've read. I mean, he did something like 10,000 sessions, but and there's other people too. It's quite popular nowadays, right? There's lots of people doing channeling. My take on it is that we're all channeling all the time in varying degrees of um, like how clear is that channel and how strong is that channel. We are like televisions or radios, and this, I'm not even sure it's the body or the brain. It may be something stranger, this tuning, where exactly that tuning happens. Right? It seems to be the mind itself, but where is the mind located? So I'm interested in being able to do that while still being who I am and still being awake and still operating in the world. Me, that's the ideal. So that I can access expanded states of awareness, access information, intuition, guidance, all this stuff without having to like call myself a different name or like do some weird woo stuff that people would be like, what's going on here? Right? I just want to be able to tap into the Akashic records or know things. And I believe I already do that. I believe that um, years of meditation practice have allowed me to do that. And I think I was already um, a sensitive and tuned in being. Of course, there's been other things that have like numbed and dulled it, but I've been trying to undo some of that trauma and stuff. Inevitably, I actually think that that can be part of it because I'm all over the place here, but this, so what the dragon was telling me about was essentially the Saturnian and Plutonic forces of that impact humanity. And I mean, this dragon did not say that. That's my interpretation. It could even be the martial energy as well. These these what we might consider negative forces, even kind of dark aspects of Neptune, even. But really, I think mostly of Saturn. So this the black cube stuff, what the crystallizing force of that's at play on planet Earth, and how on one hand that actually it can look quite evil, but it's also the discipline, the demand for discipline. When that's outside of us, it seems very oppressive. It seems like the devil. It seems like the patriarchy. But when we integrate it, when we accept life on its terms, which is I don't, you know, I'm not saying that I have accepted life on its terms, but this is the ideal, at least. This is the concept. So when we accept this influence, it causes this kind of sharpening and this focusing. And that's what I think hardship does. That's what I think Dark Night of the Soul, this stage of alchemy, the blackening, putrefaction, the black dragon in alchemy. Actually, it's a little bit different than Saturn. That's more like a scorpionic stage. Uh, but my challenge actually, I think one of the reasons why I have had a lot of hardship in my life is because I'm too dreamy. I'm too much of a space cadet. And that's why TM, I loved it. I love transcendental meditation and I was good at it, but it was bad for me. It made me thin and sickly, which is what it actually does to people. Because they become less and less focused physically. You could essentially meditate yourself to death, right? I mean, you lose your hunger, you lose all desire for worldly things, for sex, for just your consciousness withdraws from the earthly stuff, which in Eastern philosophy is considered a good thing. I'm not entirely certain that that is always the best thing. Maybe at a certain stage that we start to ascend again, and then because that would suggest that there's like something wrong, something fallen, something bad, that we're in hell, that we're in purgatory, that our bad karma has brought us here. I'm not entirely sold on that idea. I think maybe more there's some cyclical uh, thing happening, and that there's some kind of benefit to that. Just like in alchemy, that's considered a cycle that continues. There's a refinement process. And in tarot, we have the Wheel of Fortune that it says the very same thing. But as I was saying in the last video, I so as I experience this spiritual attunement where I feel this bliss, where I feel this opening of all the energy centers, I feel my heart opening, I feel my third eye opening, and the the big deal is when the crown chakra opens because you can open all of the chakras by opening the crown chakra, and then you feel this inner healer, um, and that when that opens, then really the entire aura expands and becomes kind of supercharged. But it's also a kind of very not entirely comfortable as that's happening. There can be a lot of pain and suffering in that too. In fact, there's almost like this transfixed thing, which I think relates to the crucifixion. There's this like there's this in the atonement, the at one ment, there is all of that, all of the karma has to be kind of atoned for in the moment. So like, and I've been experiencing this, um, all this suffering that somebody else around me would not even see. It's happening inside. It's all being haunted by bad memories, being tortured mentally, and how that can translate right into the body. Like, so you're feeling in the body. Like, I've had so much nerve pain and spinal pain, like for a lot of my life. And when I was younger, I had terrible allergies, which is like, um, it's just like, it's like a pain. It's like a mixture of pain and itching, and like in your skin and in your head and in your nerves. And um, I've had these kind of conditions that most people wouldn't even see that I'm experiencing. And I think it's like a kind of spiritual test, or it's kind of a wall that as you're trying to channel more energy, as you're trying to pull more energy through from higher to lower, or channel it through your body, bring it into manifestation. It's like energy going through um, wires that have too much resistance, or they're not big enough gauge or something like that. It's just like the elements on the stove. The reason they heat up is because of the resistance in them. And that's what it feels like. And so there's all these feelings that make it kind of difficult in pursuing that spiritual development, because at this point the spiritual development to me is not, it's not about knowing things, it's not about analysis or assess, like it's not um not academic, it's not even explainable very easily. It's beingness, it's an embodiment, and it's an attunement. And when that is really happening, when I'm really achieving that alignment, it becomes almost impossible to describe it. And it becomes difficult to be, um, well, it actually becomes easier to be in the world, and yet you feel separate from it. You feel kind of like you're balancing on a tight rope over a canyon. Like you could, um, because you've worked and you focused to get into this kind of refined place, and then you know that you can lose it, right? Because everything's amplified too. Everything, like when you've gotten to this place where you can have no thoughts, where you can just have this stillness, you're like at the eye of a cyclone. That's what it feels like. Feels like this very rarefied experience. But if you lean to the left a little bit, or like an inch, there's all of a sudden a lot of torque, and you can just be whipped off into that maelstrom. So you have to be very focused. And what that looks like is like, if so, because all that, I think, this is my take on it, that that when you hold yourself in this place, all the karma wants to be accounted for, and so it will try and manifest in whatever way it can. I don't know how that works. I don't know how the rules work, but it's just my feeling. So it'll happen in the body where, I mean, it can it can literally be like, um, a cold sore or a pimple, or mystery pains, or stubbing one's toe, or um, like, something happened recently where somebody keyed my vehicle, and it was like, really, and it's interesting. They did two big X's on the doors, like huge gouges, like 2 feet length X's. And I'm pretty sure I know who did it. There's this like psycho bitch who decided that she hated me, um, for no reason. Well, because I'm gay. I mean, that's what she was. She was being very homophobic and whatever, and left. She lived in my building like a year ago. Her and her husband harassed me for like almost a year. I had to, I went to the police. They didn't do anything, of course. Um, my landlord I had to like put it in writing several times and really kick his ass to do something about it. Finally, he evicted them. Actually, when he evicted them, they were having a domestic over their brand new baby, and the police came anyways. Long story, but um, I know she's just, her and her husband are just like, but I think like the universe is kind of using whatever's in around to kind of, I mean, that's what my intuition says. That's my take on it. So like seeing that was very upsetting, right? Like having my vehicle keyed, and not just a little thing, it's like a huge thing. And then, the coincidentalness of it, and the feelings were like kind of exaggerated, like huge feelings of like, rage and vengeance. Like I wanted to hunt them down and get the shit out of them. Like, and the temptation to fantasize about that. Um, but I observed that, all of that, and so these things happen. This kind of amplification of things that I believe is part of this atonement, and that it gets, as you're doing this practice, when you meditate a lot, when you really focus on that alignment with the Tao, with non duality, with the divine that is ever present, which you get a sense for. You can taste it. You can dial into it. You can tune to it with enough practice. It becomes easier to do that. With a lot of meditation, you just know the feeling. Like you can just tune to it. I can, at least. And I believe that that's what happens. Like after a while, you don't even need to meditate to be in that space. It's just, your instrument is just playing that music. Unless you derail it, unless you gunk up the works by smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, and I think even like having sex or masturbating, that all of those things will derail it. Eating shitty food, having shitty thoughts, too much social media, there's so many things that will do it. Like you really have to work hard. You really have to, it's not, you have to prioritize it. It has to be important to get into that state, right? That is what that Saturnian discipline is about. When you take that Saturnian authority inside of yourself, you become the authority instead of having it outside. Instead of somebody telling you you should do this, you shouldn't do that. This is the rules. These are the laws. This is I'm going to protect you. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to, structure your life for you. Once you become the disciplinarian in your life, then you say, no, I'm not going to. Like, I saw this young woman at the grocery store. She's using a cane. She's got like dyed hair and, you know, nose ring. It's the mold. 20 something using a cane, disabled. But she's buying a giant tub of ice cream with Smarties in it. Like, if at 20 years old you're using a cane because you're disabled, like, take care of your health. Because if you're sick in your 20s, you're gonna have a long road of shittiness if you don't turn that around. I mean, I don't know what her story is, but a giant bucket of ice cream is not gonna help. And yeah, it's not mine to judge her life. She can have a shitty life. Sure. This it's inevitable that people suffer their consequences. Like it's inevitable that we all have to atone at some point. And I think what happens is we just finally get tired of suffering and we clue in enough to realize that it's up to us. And that when we blame other people, we're dispersing our energy, we're giving away our power. And if we just bring it back, focus on ourselves. So I've learned that lesson pretty well. And I think that it's part of my nature. Maybe I've reincarnated enough times to figure it out. Doesn't mean that I am free of suffering now, but I know what it means. I know it means, well, focus. The there's some things I really still haven't figured out. I mean, I'm not sure if I haven't. The thing that um puzzles me is being kind of pulled still into the world of doing. Because this spiritual practice is about being. And that being is lovely. It's great. Being in the world, being embodied, feeling the aliveness. But I don't want to do shit. I don't want to work. I don't want to do most things. Like when I was out walking and I was thinking of making this video, I was like, oh, I should take some video of the rain, of the birds, of the whatever. I'm like, it's too much work. It's because like when I think about it, there's this like efforting. Um, that's the interesting thing. It's really clear to me. Like there's some things that it's just all about efforting, and then there's other things that it's effortless, and that's what being is. Being is quite effortless. There's this flow that kind of gives you this feeling of just like floating and being carried by the current. My intuition says that's the way to go. That's the way it's supposed to be. And even though it seems contrary to everything that everybody's ever told you and the way the world seems to work, if you let go, if you allow, things will work out. Part of me is like, mm, but I haven't worked in 6 months. And if I don't figure out how to generate money, like I'm gonna be in trouble eventually or whatever. Or there's this haunting, there's these like fearful things that it's like you gotta I and I'm all the ideas, the brain starts thinking, which then pulls me right out of that being into the past and the future. So like academically I know what's going on here. Like, no, I need to stay in being because that's where everything is. That's where well-being is. That's what I want, right? Is well-being. And it's not necessarily true. Like I'm not I've got food, I've got shelter, I've got everything. Everything's good. Isn't this but it's this like apprehension that if I don't do. And yet I haven't been doing a lot for the past 6 years. I mean, I probably worked maybe 2.5 of those years of the past 6 years. And I just made that decision because my health was bad. And I haven't received any disability, anything like that. It was purely my own savings and investment from previously working very hard and selling my home and all that stuff. So it's kind of just worked out for me. But perhaps because of, well, I don't know exactly the cause. It may be because I am coming back to this place where the stakes are higher because the spiritual energy is flowing stronger, that the testing gets more intense again and the fears come up more to be faced. So how how committed am I to being? How committed am I to staying in this place of being and not getting pulled out from fearful thoughts? Oh, I've got to start doing that little period of time of like laziness. It was just a lucky break. But now I got to get back to work, doing, efforting. But I don't know. I don't know. Because when I'm really tuned into that place, I don't want to do anything. I just, I just want to be like the birds, like the trees. I want to be in the flow. And this voice inside me says, you'll be taken care of. You'll be provided for. You'll have what you need. And that makes sense because when I'm in that place, I don't need much. I'm not bored. I'm not hungry. I'm not tired. I'm not thirsty. Like there's a feeling of contentedness that just carries me along, like just kind of floating. So I have to kind of trust that that will continue. That is what my intuition says, that eventually you'll get. So there's this like lady in, I'm not sure, 60s or 70s or 80s. I'm not sure when, but her name was Peace Prophet. She may even still be alive, but she was doing this walk across North America um, with like just the clothes on her body. Walking, I think walking. I don't think hitchhiking. It's walking from one side to the other and back, and huge trips just walking across, I think, the US, maybe Canada too, but no, I think it's the US. Very, very devout, spiritual person, just trusting that nobody would harm her and that she would have what she needed. And I guess people fed her, people let her stay at their place and took care of her. And she didn't ask for anything. She wasn't begging. She just trusted that the universe would take care of her. And it did. And not only that, but she gained a lot of notoriety. She brought a lot of attention to her cause, which I think was like nuclear disarmament or something. And I think there's lots of examples of that. I mean, the book Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda, he documents people that he met that were like people with stigmata. This woman who never ate, and yet once a week, she stigmata would open up and she would bleed and bleed and bleed, and then they would close up. And how how did she not die? She didn't. She fasted all the time. A bunch of examples of that. And sure, yeah, I've never met somebody that could do that, but I do believe it. That there are breatharians, that there are people that transcend what we think is normal. And I believe also that we have this kind of confirmation bias that we just see, um, that reality reflects what we believe. So often we don't see these things. We don't see ghosts. We don't see UFOs. We don't see, because generally our minds are closed to that, or it doesn't serve a purpose, doesn't benefit us to have that kind of experience, because that's not how we develop spiritually. And that's what we're doing here. That's what I believe we're doing here. Because if you think about it, it's like, what? Seriously? We're just emulating stuff here to just work ourselves to death and have a little window of going on holidays to Mexico or something. I've never been on holiday to Mexico, but uh, you know, you look around, it's like what the this isn't even sophisticated. This isn't. Look at the cities, and it's like who who thought this was a good idea? It's stupid. It's ugly. It's dumb. We've been working on this for a while now, and it looks this bad. I mean, big cities are kind of amazing, but most places, um, the town that I live in, it's very hodgepodge and no, no design. Um, and yet there's been Freemasons here for 150 years. What the fuck are they doing? Okay, wrapping it up. If you're watching, thanks. Hope you found it enlightening.